Genesis 4 is the story of Cain and Abel. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord, but it wasn't the first fruits. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it, referring to sin. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass that when they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is Abel your brother? He said, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you're cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and vagabond you shall be on earth. And Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. And the Lord said to him, Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Then that chapter goes on to describe the descendants of Cain, beginning with the bad Enoch and eventually Tubal Cain, who the Freemasons honor. So, east of Eden is a specific reference to Cain and his bloodline. East of Eden is also the name of a novel published in 1952 by American author John Steinbeck. Steinbeck considered East of Eden his magnum opus, which is Latin for a great work, which is a Freemasonic term. Steinbeck said of East of Eden, It has everything in it I have been able to learn about my craft in all these years. East of Eden became an instant bestseller in 1952, a month after it was released, even though it combined biblical allusion and sexual violence and sadism. Its popularity skyrocketed again in 2003 after being named Oprah's book club pick. This book was inspired by the story of Cain and Abel and includes many parallels to that story. Timshel is a major theme repeated in this book. The Hebrew root is Timshol from Genesis 4:7, which in Hebrew means you will rule over or you shall have dominion. The word appears in Genesis 4:7 where God speaks to Cain, offering him the choice to rule over sin. This says Steinbeck used the word Timshel to mean thou mayest, but that is not accurate in Hebrew. It's highly unlikely that this author didn't know the correct translation. It's more likely that he knew the exact Hebrew translation and used it esoterically to mean Cain shall rule. In the book, the character Adam is the father of Caleb, an archetype of Cain, and Aaron, an archetype of Abel in the book. So from here on, I'm just going to refer to Aaron as Abel and Caleb as Cain. Adam, his dying word to his son Cain was Timshel. Since Abel, Cain's brother, is dead at the time of Adam's death and his dying word to Cain is Timshel, the implication is that Adam means Cain shall rule. This story is primarily set in Salinas Valley, California, which is about 50 miles south of San Francisco at the end of World War I. But the first 14 chapters are set in New England, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, where the main families in the book migrated from in real life. which follows our pattern of witches from New England. The exoteric plot is about the two families, the Trasks and the Hamiltons, both European immigrant families who arrived in New England in the mid-1800s and traveled west to settle California. Members of these families were first-generation maternal and paternal ancestors of John Steinbeck, the author, in real life. Samuel Hamilton, Steinbeck's maternal grandfather, was born in 1830. He was the son of John Hamilton and Esther Clark Hamilton of the Scottish clan Hamilton. Esther Clark Hamilton's ancestors were aristocrats from Scotland, and here is their crest and coat of arms. It's got acorns on it. That's definitely druidic. But here, ships, knights, of course, knight's helmet. And this one, this says, the undifferenced arms of the chief of Hamiltons from 1503 onwards. What in the world are those things? What are those things? Some kind of chimeric monster. Okay. It says Samuel Hamilton Steinbeck's maternal grandfather was born in 1830, son of John Hamilton and Esther Clark of the Scottish clan Hamilton. Aristocrats from Scotland, this is their coat of arms. Steinbeck's paternal ancestor, Johann Adolf Grostenbeck, arrived in the U.S. in 1858, shortening the family name to Steinbeck. He settled in Massachusetts, but migrated to California in 1872. Both of those ancestors came from an agrarian heritage like Cain that dated back hundreds of years in their respective countries of origin. Sam Hamilton grew up on a farm in Ireland, and Johann Grostenbeck was raised on the family farm in Germany. The history of agriculture in California is woven through Steinbeck's family roots in the story. The story parallels the concentration of large tracts of prime farming land placed in the hands of the few and state policies that supported the monopolization of that farmland by the few. Adam Trask, with newly inherited wealth from his late father, arrives in California and settles with his pregnant wife, Kathy Ames, in the Salinas Valley in the story. Without Adam's knowledge, Kathy tried to abort the pregnancy with a knitting needle, but she doesn't succeed and gives birth to the twin boys. She doesn't want the family, so she shoots Adam in the shoulder and abandons the family. She becomes a prostitute and eventually a madam in Salinas, in a brothel that becomes famous as a den of sexual sadism and a source of blackmail on the rich and powerful. So, if Cain and Abel are the sons of this mother, then the mother is an archetype of Eve in this story. Adam survives the shooting but falls into a deep depression. But his Chinese-American servant Lee and his neighbor Samuel Hamilton rouse Adam out of the depression enough for him to name his sons Caleb and Aaron after biblical characters, but at the root they are the archetype of Cain and Abel. Lee becomes a good friend and has long philosophical talks with Adam and Samuel about the story of Cain and Abel, maintaining that it has been imperfectly translated in the English language Bibles and that his ancestors correctly translated it to find it to mean that people are not compelled to pursue sainthood, nor are they doomed to sin. In the novel, Adam, Samuel, and Lee have a significant conversation in which they realize that since Abel died before he had children, they themselves are the descendants of Cain. Adam's sons, Cain and Abel, grow up oblivious to their mother's situation. They are opposites in personality. Abel is virtuous and dutiful. Cain is wild and rebellious. So Adam starts a business venture and loses all of his money in the family fortune. Cain becomes a farmer. Abel becomes an Episcopal priest. That's an Anglican priest. The Church of England, a Druid church. Fits our pattern of the witches. Cain attempts to earn his father's approval and earn his money back by capitalizing on World War I and selling beans grown in the Salinas Valley to nations in Europe for a considerable profit. He's successful and plans to give Adam the earnings, but Adam refuses to accept Cain's gift, telling him to give it back to the poor families and farmers he exploited. This echoes what happened to Cain in the Bible. His gift was rejected by God. In a fit of rage and jealousy in the story, Cain takes Abel to see their mother, the madam, who's now very wealthy, knowing that it will be a shock to him. After learning the truth, Abel is disgusted. The mother is ashamed, so she signs her estate over to Abel and commits suicide. But since Abel's idealistic worldview is shattered, he enlists in the army to fight in World War I, but he's killed in action. And when that happens, their father, Adam, suffers a stroke when he hears the news. Lee pleads with the bedridden and dying Adam to forgive his only remaining son. Adam responds non-verbally, indicating that he forgives Cain, and then he says, Timshel. Now a little about John Steinbeck, the author. Here he is photographed with Lyndon Johnson. We already know that his ancestors were European, Scottish, and Irish aristocrats who settled in New England, which follows our pattern of other powerful people, witches, who settled in New England from the UK area of England, Scotland, and Ireland. And John Steinbeck also had German ancestry as well, which we saw before. During his writing career, he authored 33 books, including Of Mice and Men and the Grapes of Wrath, which sold 14 million copies. Many of his books were made into films, including East of Eden. It says Steinbeck's relationship with Hollywood had solidified to the point where his books were being greenlit as movies as soon as they released. Many of Steinbeck's works were required reading in American high schools. One of the 10 most frequently read books in public high schools was Of Mice and Men, and it was also one of the key texts used in England by the examining body for higher education. Steinbeck has roads and towns and museums in California named after him. His father, John Steinbeck, served as Monterey County treasurer. The Steinbecks were members of the Episcopal Church, which is the Anglican Church, which is a Druid church, like Westminster Abbey, and fits our pattern. In 1930, Steinbeck met with marine biologist Ed Ricketts, and they became close friends, and Ricketts became a mentor to Steinbeck, teaching him, it says, a great deal about philosophy and biology. It says Ricketts became a proponent of ecological thinking, in which man was only part of a great chain of being caught in a web of life too large for him to control or understand. Steinbeck's first novel, Cup of Gold, was published in 1929, and it's loosely based on the life and death of a privateer, Henry Morgan. A privateer is a person or vessel engaging in commerce, raiding under commission of war. Since robbery under arms was a common aspect of seaborne trade until the late 19th century, all merchant ships carried arms. So, merchant ships fits our pattern. In 1930, Steinbeck wrote a werewolf murder mystery, Murder at Full Moon, that was never published. He also wrote To a God Unknown, named after a Vedic hymn. This book involves a character, Joseph, who turns his land into a pagan site with a sacred tree and rock who he makes sacrifices to, including sacrificing himself. Fits our pattern. In 1943, Steinbeck served as World War II war correspondent for the New York Times Herald Tribune and worked with the Office of Strategic Services, which is a predecessor to the CIA. It was at that time he became friends with Will Lang Jr. of Time Life magazine. During the war, Steinbeck accompanied the commando raids of Douglas Fairbanks Jr.'s Beach Jumpers program, which launched small unit diversion operations against German-held islands in the Mediterranean. After the war, he wrote a book titled The Pearl, about a pearl fisherman who finds a giant pearl and names it the Pearl of the World, but it has a curse, and he gets bitten by a scorpion. This was written in 1947, and Steinbeck, it said, wrote it knowing that it would be filmed eventually. In this story, Steinbeck complicates notions of good and evil, showing how evil can come in beautiful or prestigious packages, like the Pearl of the World. The story is presented as a fable, seemingly to warn readers of being greedy or defying the gods by trying to change their station in life. Throughout the story, we see that people are in well-placed positions to maintain that position of wealth and power by lying and conspiring against the pearl fisherman when he tries to sell the pearl. This is a plaque dedicated to Steinbeck in Sag Harbor, New York. It says, "The Old Whalers Festival, Inc. of Sag Harbor dedicates this plaque to the memory of John Steinbeck, author, Nobel Prize winner who gave his time and talent as honorary chairman of the Old Whalers Festival in Sag Harbor." That fits our pattern. The Sag Harbor Whaling and Historical Museum still functions as a Masonic temple with the upper floor used by Freemasons to this day. In 1959, he rented a cottage in a hamlet in Somerset, England, with a view of Glastonbury Tor to write his book, The Acts of King Arthur and His Noble Knights, which was a retelling of the Arthurian legend and the Knights of the Round Table. Steinbeck also visited the nearby hill fort of Cadbury Castle, the supposed site of King Arthur's court of Camelot. It says the Steinbecks recounted the time spent in Somerset as the happiest of their life. So he is a big fan of King Arthur and Camelot, just like JFK. It fits our pattern. East of Eden. Thanks for listening.